For years, the island of Jersey existed in a strange contradiction, a place so small and isolated that people believed danger simply could not survive there. An island surrounded by cold, restless water, known for rolling green fields, narrow country roads, and postcard-perfect coastal views, where crime was rare, doors were left unlocked, and children were raised with the belief that nothing truly bad could ever happen in a place this quiet. Yet between the late 1950s and the early 1970s, that belief was dismantled piece by piece by a man who did not crash into the island's history loudly, but instead seeped into it slowly, methodically, choosing moments of vulnerability with unnerving precision, appearing only when he was certain he would not be interrupted. A predator whose presence was marked not by his face, which few ever saw, but by sensations that lingered long after he was gone, the rough burn of rope against skin, the smell of damp fabric and decay, the sudden beam of a flashlight in the dark, and the realization that someone had been watching long enough to know exactly when to strike. A figure the media would eventually call the Beast of Jersey, though long before the name existed, fear already had a shape, beginning on a November night in 1957 when a nurse waited alone at a bus stop after finishing a late shift, tired, distracted, thinking only about getting home, unaware that nearby, hidden by darkness and hedgerows, a man had already decided she was the one. And within seconds, a rope was pulled tight around her neck, her body dragged from the roadside into a nearby field where violence unfolded quickly and efficiently, leaving her alive but badly injured, confused and terrified, able to tell police almost nothing except that the attacker wore a scarf over his face and spoke in what sounded like an Irish accent that felt forced, artificial, as if it were being worn like a mask. And when police searched the area, they found almost nothing. No witnesses, no clear footprints, no fingerprints, just a shaken survivor and the unsettling realization that whoever had done this knew how to leave without leaving himself behind. And when another woman was attacked in March of 1958 in almost the exact same way, taken from a bus stop, dragged by a rope into a field, assaulted and left alive, it became clear that this was not an isolated incident. And by the summer of that same year, when a third woman reported the same method, the same rope, the same setting, and the same strange accent, Jersey's illusion of safety began to crack. Whispers spread quickly through the island, routines changed, women avoided walking alone at night, and police quietly began to fear what they would not yet say out loud, that they were dealing with a serial offender who was learning, refining, and growing bolder with every attack, especially when months passed with no arrest and no meaningful leads, emboldening the man behind the crimes to expand his methods. Because by the early 1960s, the Beast of Jersey crossed a psychological boundary that would permanently alter the island's sense of security. No longer limiting himself to attacks outdoors, but entering homes, spaces meant to be safe, beginning with an incident so disturbing it sent shockwaves through the entire community when a child was taken from his own bedroom in February 1960, awakened by a flashlight shining directly into his face, led outside under threat, assaulted, and returned home as if nothing had happened, a crime that shattered the belief that locked doors and familiar surroundings could offer protection. And from that point on, fear became constant. Parents slept lightly, checked windows repeatedly, and reacted to every unexpected sound with panic, especially after a mother and daughter were targeted in their home, phone lines cut, lights disabled, the attacker moving confidently through the darkness, attacking the mother first, then the child, following the same ritual seen in previous attacks, reinforcing the horrifying truth that this was not chaos, this was control. And as reports continued to surface, including children awakened by a silent figure standing at the end of their beds, wearing a crude but deeply unsettling mask,
watching before fleeing, it became evident that the beast was evolving, incorporating fear itself into his process, and between 1960 and 1961, multiple children were abducted from their homes, assaulted in fields, and returned with threats meant to ensure silence, while police struggled under mounting pressure, eventually requesting assistance from Scotland Yard, bringing in experienced investigators who quickly recognized that the beast was not impulsive or disorganized, but ritualistic, deliberate, someone who studied his victims, their routines, their homes, and the environment, striking during specific hours, choosing locations that allowed escape, and leaving behind just enough confusion to slow investigations, even planting false clues like cigarette cartons, despite not being a smoker, and faking an accent to mislead witnesses. While public fear intensified, neighborhood watches formed, information kits were distributed through newspapers, and nearly every man on the island was asked to provide fingerprints, a request that almost all complied with, except a small number who, inexplicably, were not aggressively pursued, a failure that would later haunt investigators. And in the absence of answers, suspicion turned inward, focusing on a socially isolated man whose habits made him an easy target for collective fear, leading to vigilante justice rather than due process, his home burned, his life destroyed, and his exile celebrated prematurely. Because while attacks temporarily stopped, they eventually resumed, proving that fear can make communities dangerous not only to predators, but to innocents as well. And when the beast resurfaced in the mid-1960s and late 1970s, taunting police with letters that promised future violence and mocked their inability to stop him, the island was plunged back into paranoia, especially when another teenage girl was attacked in 1966, the beast whispering chilling threats about killing, reinforcing the belief that he was capable of murder, a belief that only intensified after the unsolved killing of a young woman near a bus stop that same year, a crime that fit his pattern too closely to ignore. And yet, despite renewed urgency, the beast vanished again, waiting, until finally, in July of 1971, his decade-long reign ended not through careful profiling or forensic breakthroughs, but through chance, when police pursued a speeding vehicle late at night, leading to a crash, a foot chase, and the arrest of a man's clothing, smell, and possessions aligned too perfectly with years of survivor testimony to dismiss. And when authorities searched him and later his home, they uncovered a private world of obsession, a hidden room filled with wigs, masks, raincoats soaked in bodily fluids, photographs of victims' homes arranged carefully like trophies, ritualistic objects suggesting a fixation on power, identity, and transformation, revealing a double life so convincing that neighbors, colleagues, and even children described him as kind, generous, and trustworthy, a man deeply embedded in the community, married, involved in charitable work, trusted with children, yet secretly orchestrating violence for more than a decade. And when brought to trial, the evidence showed not madness, but calculation, a predator who engineered misdirection, exploited trust, and relied on his own reputation as camouflage, resulting in a conviction that offered relief but not peace, especially as later investigations uncovered allegations of further abuse linked to institutions meant to protect the vulnerable, allegations supported by disturbing testimonies, physical remnants of restraint, and patterns of silence, though time, death, and missing evidence prevented full accountability, leaving unanswered questions that still linger today. Questions about how many victims were never counted, how many warnings were missed, and whether justice, delayed and incomplete, was ever enough. Because even imprisonment failed to fully close the chapter, with early release, public outrage, forced relocation, and a quiet death that contrasted strikingly with the terror left behind, ensuring that the Beast of Jersey remains more than a historical case, but a warning that evil does not always look monstrous, that it often hides behind familiarity, kindness, and routine, that fear can blind communities as easily as it can unite them, and that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are not born from myth or legend, but from ordinary lives lived in plain sight, patiently waiting for the moment no one is watching.